My name is Dr. Kevin Pecca. I wanted to make a podcast that exposes people to the true miracles of life and health. All the guests on this show have been specially picked because they bring something positive to the world. They have some of the most amazing and inspiring life stories. These people have a passion for living, healing, and leaving the world better than they found it. There is something inside these people that made them keep fighting through all the tough times, even when people told them it was not possible. They carried on and made their lives beautiful again. And now they are sharing their experiences with the world. This is the Expect Miracles podcast. Enjoy the show. Dr. Michael Gruttadauria is an internationally renowned clinician who has been serving his profession and patients all around the world. He holds board certification in chiropractic neurology through the American Chiropractic Neurology Board and is on the advisory board of the Functional Medicine University. He has participated in the post-doctoral program for traumatic brain injury and has completed advanced studies in the diagnosis and treatment of vestibular disorders through the Carrick Institute for Postdoctoral Education. Dr. Mike is an amazing healer and specializes in healing chronic neurological conditions. Please welcome Dr. Michael Gruttadauria. Dr. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing perfect. How about you tonight?
Great. Dr. Mike, I'm real excited to have you on the podcast today. You heal a lot of neurological conditions. You also do functional medicine. You do blood testing. You do a lot of great stuff, and you see a lot of extreme cases that you're really able to help out and get people better, and that's what the podcast is all about. But before we jump into that, how did you get started? Where are you from and everything?
I'm actually from Long Island and grew up here and went to, was always fascinated with sports medicine. Thought I was into, competitive bodybuilding and played football in high school and so on. And so I always thought I wanted to work with athletes and became a chiropractor after I hurt my neck.
How did you hurt your neck?
Lifting weights.
Like way too heavy?
Oh my God. Just trying to do more than I should and just came up from a squat and really couldn't get up. And then bang, I just felt this explosion in my neck.
Ooh.
And I went to an orthopedic surgeon who ran some x-rays and just put me on 3 different medications. And I was in college and I was just taking painkillers and muscle relaxers and anti-inflammatories. I wasn't getting any better. I couldn't work out. I couldn't focus. I couldn't study. And by chance, my mom met a woman who was a chiropractor. And I had never been to a chiropractor before. And she said, listen, just come to my office and, let me check you out. And literally 2 adjustments later, I was off all the meds and I was back in action. So yeah, it was a natural kind of fit for me and pursued chiropractic.
So after you graduated college, you just jumped right into chiropractic school?
Yep. And then was very much interested in sports injuries and stuff and was really intrigued with the brain and how the system worked in neurology and so on. And I got involved with the Carrick Institute for Graduate Studies and started this neurology diplomate program. And I've been through the program several times already. And they just keep evolving and growing because, what I learned when I first got out of college has changed so dramatically. But as an athlete and always working with athletes, I was always so much into nutrition. So I was always working on diet plans and nutrition. So when functional medicine started to really come into its own, I started studying there and really kind of created a little niche for myself, which is looking at the body from 3 different perspectives, from a structural perspective, obviously from a chiropractic and structural perspective, and that whole musculoskeletal piece, but then looking at what's going on neurologically and what's happening biochemistry. But the interesting thing was when I was in school, I really hated biochemistry. It was those crazy classes that I thought, I just need to study this to pass the boards. And now, literally every day, all I do is read labs and look at the nuances in people's chemistry to try to break down, some of the reasons why they are the way they are, and then create lifestyle modifications and all different kinds of things to help them go from where they are to where they need to be. So the interesting thing is, I see everything from children with autism to patients with Alzheimer's and everything in between. So, a lot of people say, how do you specialize in all these different problems? And it's not that I specialize in treating any of those problems. Really, what I'm looking for is trying to figure out what's wrong with this patient and how can I fix it? Trying to come up with a specific treatment for a label.
Yeah. So Dr. Mike, what is, for those that are wondering, functional neurology, and how do you help people in your office? What's the consultation like? Blood tests right away? How does it work?
Great question. So when people go to a neurologist, neurologists are brilliant diagnosticians. The challenge for neurologists is that their hands are tied when it comes to treatment. So if you have a lesion in your brain, there's nowhere on earth you'd rather be than in New York City with one of the top neurologists. But they use diagnostic imaging to look for the problems and electrodiagnostics and so on. But most problems that people seek neurologists for are functional problems, meaning like dizziness, headache, migraines, all these different kinds of issues.
Stuff that can be fixed.
Yeah, I mean, they're all symptoms. Those are symptoms. You can't see a migraine on an MRI.
Right. Well, that's the thing too. All these people, they come into our offices. My CAT scan came back clear. Blood works fine. MRI is not showing nothing, and they're in a world of pain.
Right. And it's a huge challenge because they're looking for answers. And what we need to be able to do is to give them a different paradigm, a different perspective on what's actually happening. So to then go through a consultation history and then do a physical exam that's looking at how the system works versus trying to see if it's broken or not is a different way of thinking. So we're looking for like the nuances in the brain is basically creating a way for us to deal with our environment. That's what the brain does. So we're taking in information constantly from the environment through our senses. The brain processes that information and then it has an expression. So the brain's output is thought, movement, and internal function. So if you have an interference with what's coming in, then you have a processing problem and then you have an output problem. And usually that's where people start developing symptoms. So from a chiropractic perspective, it's very similar. You know, we're taught in chiropractic college that we have a subluxation that's creating nerve interference.
Right. Bone out of place, pressure on the nervous system.
Right. So from this little shift in thinking, what I'm looking at is as these bones move, as all of our bones move, they drive one of two main brain pacemakers. Our brain has two pacemakers, like the heart has a pacemaker. The brain has two. One of them is dependent on movement. So every time you move, you power up your brain to a certain degree. The brain's an electrical system, but we have no battery and no plug. So where does it get its electricity from? It gets it from this constant input. So we have these different senses, sight, sound, taste, all these different things. They're called the special senses. But those are on and off throughout the day. If you close your eyes don't give the brain any information. But because gravity is working on us 24/7, our body has to be able to counter gravity. So standing up against gravity or sitting up against gravity will drive our musculoskeletal system, which then gives feedback to the brain. When we move our body, our muscles and our joints, we're constantly stimulating the brain through these receptors, joint receptors and muscle receptors like muscle spindles. The other constant receptor system that's always working is called a vestibular system, which is built into our inner ear. So your brain always wants to know where your head is. So if you closed your eyes and I flipped you upside down, you'd know you were upside down. When you walk onto an elevator, you'd close your eyes and you'd know if it was going up or down because we have this built-in sense that tells us where we are. Because of gravity, like I'm saying, those two are very powerful drivers of the brain. When you have a problem in either or both of those systems, you have decreased brain integration and then you have decreased brain output. That's why chiropractic works, because you stimulate the system through a chiropractic adjustment, you power up the brain, and then the brain is able to get back on track. We take it a little bit further when we look at these neurological consequences, and we're looking at how the eyes are moving, how the balance system's working, head position, and all these different things tell us.
I find that very interesting. I love all the testing you guys do.
Yeah, so it's cool details on basically, how things are working and what we could do to make make it better.
Okay, so let's say someone comes in your office with a migraine. You fix the structural component. You give them adjustment. What is the functional neurology? Where does that come in at that point?
The first question I ask all my patients is, have you ever hit your head? Because one of the biggest things that we see is basically the consequences of post-concussion. Since this whole NFL explosion in concussions and all the research and so on, we've learned so much about brain trauma and how it affects us. And even whiplash injuries can cause concussions.
Yeah, it doesn't take much.
It doesn't take much. And the consequences long-term can be devastating. So many times people have some kind of previous history of some kind of head trauma that may have initiated dysfunction that then led to the migraine syndrome. Now, the other side of migraine is toxicity. And this is where the functional medicine piece comes in, because we're living in a very toxic world, a very toxic environment. It's everywhere. Food, water, air, and we're exposed to metals and pesticides and herbicides and all these different things. So our body has to have a very efficient detoxification capacity. When it doesn't, toxins build up and it affects the brain. Your brain is exquisitely sensitive to toxins. If we were to do 2 shots of vodka right now on an empty stomach, your brain would be very, very different it would slow down, you feel different, all these different things. And that's like 2 ounces of liquid in your entire body, and it still is able to change your brain. Well, imagine a lifetime of small exposures that build up, because many of these things are fat soluble. They stay inside of us, and it just changes
For
our
years. Yeah.
So we need to look at all of these different parameters. We look at parasites. Parasites are much more common than you think, because doctors are not testing for them. And even when they do, testing is like 90% false negatives.
Absolutely. And that's a good point. So like when somebody says, "Oh, I already got blood work. How detailed is just your standard blood work?"
I don't want to ever knock any other doctors, because we're all a product of our training. We're trained a certain way, and we do things the way we were trained because we trust the people that trained us. So traditional medical training is we're looking for disease. So unless somebody has a very specific problem that we're going to identify a test for, generally they're doing a complete blood count, a CBC, a straight chemistry panel, a vitamin D, and maybe they're going to do a lipid profile and look at cholesterol. So when patients come in and they say, "Look at all this blood work I have," I'm like, well, this tells us you don't have any disease, but it doesn't tell us what you do have. It doesn't tell us any imbalances.
It's ruling out all major pathologies, right?
Right. So it's great information. We need that information, but we need to dig a lot deeper.
Definitely. So how do you detox people from heavy metals and parasites and all that stuff?
So we do blood, urine, stool, and genetics. We're really like covering all the bases. My goal, and I tell all my patients, listen, half my job is to take care of you. The other half is to teach you. Because the more you understand about how your body works, the more empowered you are to take better care of it forever. So I'm going to get all these labs back, and I'm going to go through each one individually and teach you why I did it and what it means for you. When we get all these things back, we get a really comprehensive view of like a snapshot in time of what's going on biochemically. Once we see, all right, this patient has nutritional imbalances, they could have something called MTHFR gene mutations, which is just one of many, many potential epigenetic changes that we're now testing for. They could have gastrointestinal dysfunction is rampant. Everybody's got something going on with their gut. The microbiome is a big deal. Like, we're 1/10 human. For every one human cell, we have 9 bacterial cells that live inside of us. And the interplay between that bacteria and our immune system and our vitamin production and our brain and neurological systems is huge. So all of this stuff needs to be assessed before you can really make some decisions about what to do.
So Dr. Mike, what kind of patients do you see in your office, and what are the results you're getting? I think you see some pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah. It's interesting because it goes through waves. Very often, I'll get several migraine patients, and then those patients seem to know a lot of other migraine patients, I get a whole bunch of people with migraine. I see a lot of post-concussion syndrome, a lot of even, kids all the way to professional athletes. But what I probably see most is anxiety and depression, because it's just so unbelievably common, and people either are not getting results from taking, standard SSRI medications, or they're sick and tired of taking these drugs, or they just feel like they don't even want to start those drugs to begin with.
So Dr. Mike, I got a question for you. I get this question a lot. So if somebody does come into the office with depression and anxiety, the first thing they ask is, "Yeah, no, I get what you do, but how is a chiropractic adjustment, a lab test, my nervous system, how does that correlate with depression?"
So somebody comes in and they have anxiety and or depression. The first thing I do is ask them, tell me about your past, tell me about yourself, tell me about your life, what's happening. Do you have any emotional traumatic experiences? Are you working with a therapist? Are you working with a psychiatrist? Because in order to really help somebody that has these types of conditions, it's a total team effort. You really need to be working with other professionals. Like, I work with amazing psychologists that are integrative psychologists. I have a terrific holistic neurologist, a holistic psychiatrist. So the doc that I work with in Manhattan is one of the top internal medicine, functional medicine practitioners in the world, in my opinion. We have an amazing team. So I feel very confident that I might be the portal of entry today, but you're probably going to be touched by several of these people, because it's really taking many different angles. When somebody is depressed, when you say depressed, what it means is kind of squashed down. So their brain is squashed down and their emotionality is altered. When you think about it that way, the brain and the mind are one. You can't separate them. So your brain is this glob of fat sitting in a soup of chemistry that really interacts with your body. And so what's going on in your body, chemically wise, is affecting your brain. Just like we use the alcohol analogy. There are genetic mutations that predispose people to having a reduced production of serotonin and dopamine, for instance. We know that metal toxicity interferes with the production of neurotransmitters. We know that abnormal gastrointestinal function has a direct gut-brain connection. And we also know that we are living in a wired world and a Wi-Fi world, and the impact of that has yet to even be discussed.
It's unknown, right?
And so what's happening is we're frying our brains very often. If you put a piece of steak in a microwave and you put it in for 3 minutes, it dries out. What it does is it dehydrates the tissue. And us sitting in front of a computer or using a cell phone, what's happening is it's having a profound negative impact on our brain. I said before, our brain is an electrical system, and these things are throwing out really intense electromagnetic radiation, which has a negative impact on us. So when you look at this as a whole, we're really seeing like, wow, there's chemistries involved, there's structures involved, there's neurologies involved, there are environments involved, and their thought processes involved. And the mindset of getting well really has been squashed because they come from a paradigm of sickness. When you get sick, you go to the doctor. When you're not sick, you don't go to the doctor. What we're trying to say is, you know what? You really need to be aggressively proactive with your health. Otherwise, you're probably going to be going backward and you're just waiting for a diagnosis.
Absolutely. Dr. Mike, how important is mindset when somebody's trying to heal?
Well, it depends on the person. Different personalities, everybody's got a different perspective. And so I ask people right off the bat, do you feel like you've been floundering for a long time? What do you think the possibilities of you getting better are? Do you think that this is an attainable goal? And when you hear, I'm not so sure. Last night I saw a new patient and they said, you're the 15th doctor that I've seen.
Yeah, that's frustrating for them.
So at that point, they're saying,
you're just another stop to them.
Right. Listen, I don't want to get my hopes up. I came here for a reason, but I'm a little shot at this point because I haven't really gotten any results. So when you talk about the mindset, what I try to do is say, listen, the first thing we need to do is help you understand how you got here in the first place. So I draw them a little picture and I say, all right, this is you. Here you are right now. This is you with all your problems, all your issues, all your stresses, all your successes. You got here because of your actions and your behavior. What you do got you here. Would you agree?
1,000%, yeah.
So what we want to do is we want to change something about our lives. The first thing we do is say, well, let me change what I do. So we'll use the diet example. Somebody says, you know what? I need to lose 30 pounds. Let me go on a diet. So they change the way they eat and they initially lose weight. But what happens after a while?
The diet stops and they go back to their old habits.
Right. Because it's unsustainable, because they ran out of energy. So energy is what drives behavior, mental and physical energy. So I tell them right off the bat, we're going to figure out with all these tests and everything that I'm going to do with you, what's happening with your physical energy. And I'm going to help restore your physical energy. The fatigue's going to go away, so you will have the physical energy to take massive action to get these results. But you also have a whole different side. You get mental energy. Where do you get mental energy from? And I explain to them, you get mental energy from your attitude. When we talk about attitude, we usually say a good or bad attitude. That guy's got a good attitude. And, to a certain degree, that's true. But attitude really means a relative position. So my attitude is where I think I fit in. So we break it down and say there are 4 basic attitudes. The first one is a plus attitude. I'm okay with me, and Kevin, I'm okay with you. I like me, I like you. I respect me, I respect you. That's the only good attitude there is.
Plus.
Then you have plus minus. I'm good, you're not. I'm better than you. I'm smarter than you. I'm all these different things. So now that becomes, you develop a condescending personality, an overbearing, just not a good guy. And what happens is, as a result of you having that attitude, you have less mental energy to be able to devote to taking action, to changing your outcomes. Then the third attitude is minus plus. I'm not okay, but you are. Kevin, you're better looking than me. You're smarter than me. You have more money than me. Everywhere I go, everybody's better than me. I feel less than. We call that low self-esteem. And if I have low self-esteem, then I certainly don't have the energy to be able to devote to changing the actions to do different things and have a different outcome. And then the fourth one is a minus, which is pathology. I'm not okay, neither are you, and we won't even go there. So if there are 4 basic attitudes, like the 80, 10, and 10 rule, 80% of the people are going to end up with either one of the 2 middle ones, a plus minus or a minus plus. 10% of the people end up with a plus plus, and 10% end up minus minus. So you have maybe a 10% chance of having a positive attitude. So your mental energy is probably going to be low. So if you have low mental energy, you have a poor attitude, which kind of leads to your inability to sustain long-term action. So your life stays the same. But there's one more piece. Where do we get our attitude from? We get our attitude from our beliefs. So what I believe about myself is formed when I'm a young kid, and it's given to me. It's given to me by mother, father, teacher, preacher, peers, and media. This group of influencers is constantly telling us. And on a lot of the research, the psychological research says that by the time kids are 7 or 8 years old, they've been given 140,000 negative messages and 30 to 40,000 positive messages. So depending on how you grow up, there's a good chance that you've been given a lot of negative messages, which then leads to a negative attitude.
Right. But it's never too late to change that, right? You got to snap out of it, but
This is your software program. It's never updated. You're walking around as an adult with the beliefs of a 7-year-old. So we need to work on this. We call the belief system your self-concept. Your self-concept is your self-esteem and your self-image. Your self-image is how you see yourself, and your self-esteem is how much you like what you see. So if we work there and we help people to come up with ways that they might see themselves differently, how can we build confidence? What kind of personality traits do you think somebody who could easily achieve your goals, what would they have? And how can we develop those things? And this is where a psychologist could come in, or a life coach. So now what we're doing is expanding their brain.
personal growth.
Personal growth, that's what it is. If you want to have a huge life and you want to be healthy, I always tell people health and happiness are really the two goals. And if you want those things, you need to have a life that's built on a strong foundation. That's what this whole self-concept is about. So the mindset of health really starts with feeling good about yourself. So when somebody comes in and they have these chronic illnesses, quote unquote, what I'm realizing is, hey, I need to find out more about you. So from a functional doc perspective, I'm really looking to help you as a whole person. I'm not looking to just say, hey, I'm going to try to fix your migraines, because your migraines are intertwined with the rest of your life. Develop a mindset. I'm a migraine patient. They own it.
Yeah. They become the diagnosis. Yeah. It's sad.
And it's really sad. So looking at these things gives you a totally different perspective when you're looking at it from all of these different angles. And then you come up with a strategy and you start working the strategy, and you give them homework to do. And not only are they doing things exercise-wise and nutritionally and supplements and lifestyle and so on, getting out in the sun, avoiding non-native electromagnetic radiation, a lot of the different lifestyle modifications that we need to do, we call them biohacks. But we also have to help them upgrade their thinking so that they're able to pull this off. Because if they don't change the way they think, then this will be just another stop on their journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. I completely agree. So Dr. Mike, I got another question for you. What are those glasses you're wearing over there?
So I was saying before that we're constantly exposed to a lot of external radiation. When we look at the electromagnetic spectrum, we as human beings can only see a tiny piece of it. They call it the visible light spectrum. But there's ultraviolet, infrared, gamma rays, X-rays, all these other things that we can't see, but they're all there. And in order for us to see a computer screen or a phone or a TV, it has to be powerfully lit. So these technology companies use blue light to actually powerfully light it up. Well, when we're living inside 98% of the time and we're overexposed to all this technology, we become irradiated with so much blue light that it creates an imbalance in the way our brain is taking this light in. You have two brain pacemakers. One of them I talked about before, which is in your thalamus, that creates these thalamocortical oscillations that comes from movement. The other one is actually in your hypothalamus in an area called the SCN that is light driven. So you're a young guy, but there used to be a show called Little House on the Prairie.
Oh, yeah. Never saw it, but heard about it.
All right. So it was about this family, and they grew up on a farm. When the sun came up, they were all outside, working on the farm, going to school. Everybody was outside all the time. And then they would go inside when the sun went down, and they would have candles and a fire. So they didn't have this insane exposure to indoor lighting that we have. And they had this day-night cycle. We call it circadian rhythms. So when you wake up in the morning and you get sunlight, you have this massive surge of cortisol. It wakes your body and brain up. And then cortisol slowly comes down throughout the day. And as cortisol is coming down, melatonin's coming up, and then you go to sleep. But everybody you talk to has a sleep problem. all of these different things. They have low energy because their adrenal system is shot because they're stressed and they having all kinds of issues on that side. And then they don't sleep. So this is an imbalance in this brain pacemaker system, and we need to recreate it. So after dark, if I'm going to be on a computer, I'm doing a podcast with you, I want to reduce the amount of blue light exposure I get. So I wear these glasses. These are from a company called Blue Blocks. It cuts blue light out 100%. I can still see you. And after a while, you don't even see that it's red. It looks normal. What it does is, over the long term, if you think about how many hours you're actually on these technology devices, you can significantly reduce your exposure at night, and you'll be like shocked at how much better you sleep and all the little things that go along with it.
That's amazing. Where can you get those? Amazon?
You go on Blue Blocks, BLUBLOX.com. But, several companies make them. Just look up blue light blocking glasses, and you'll see it's becoming a very popular thing, because especially in the functional medicine community and the biohacking community, they talk a lot about it, where we need to be trying to avoid overexposure. We were never meant to be living the way we live.
Oh, yeah. And it's only getting worse.
Oh, my God. Technology has afforded us a lot of really good things, but also it's killing us. The sickness and the anxiety and depression, chronic neurological disorders. I mean, the numbers are exploding. Cancers are off the chart. So all of these different influences between diet and the lack of exercise and the exposure to these technology devices and all these different things, it's having a negative impact on our body. We need to help people understand how it's working, where their body is at right now, so we create a baseline and then help turn it around. And then you'll see all the symptoms go away, like the migraines and depression and all this stuff. I'm actually very excited because I'm going to be part of a documentary that's going to be coming out on depression.
What's it called?
It's called Food is Mood.
Oh, Food is Mood. I like that.
Food is Mood. And 3 other really high-end docs in the functional medicine community. I can't say who they are yet, but as soon as I get it, I'll send you the link. It actually started with one of my patients who came in, young man in his early 20s. His mom was a friend of one of my patients. And, my patient calls me up and says, can you see my friend's son? And I said, sure. And she goes, no, can you see him today? And I said, yeah. So that night, this young guy comes in and he looked like $1 million. I thought he was a GQ model. And I said, he looked up, and
yeah.
And he's like, oh man, I've been through the mill, I've been on all these different meds and I'm just really, really, really depressed. I can't get out of bed. And I said, well, what's going on in your life? He's like, well, I'm a college graduate. I have a great job. I have a great girlfriend. I play guitar in a rock band. We just got signed to a record deal. So I'm thinking, wow, this doesn't sound emotional. This sounds physiological. And we ran this whole panel of tests and then just started working with him. And several months later, the guy was all better. And he wrote an article about it because he wanted to spread the word. And a producer read the article and said, I want to do a documentary about it.
Wow, look at that. That's unreal. I'm pumped to see that. I'm going to look into that.
I'll send it to you.
Perfect. And Dr. Mike, what is one piece of advice that you have taken with you over the years that you would like to gift and share with the people? Could be absolutely anything.
I would say probably that you have to go through life with an open mind. We tend to form opinions about things. And, before we really get all the information or from previous exposures, we pass judgment. And then, things could change and we still have a closed mind to a lot of things. And I tell you, every single day I learn from my patients. I learn from the doctors that I work with. And I think open-mindedness is probably the biggest thing to try to keep it. And being grateful. I mean, that's the number one thing. Being grateful is probably even supersedes open-mindedness.
I agree. Well, Dr. Mike, thank you so much for coming on. Really enjoyed this episode. You're a wealth of knowledge on many aspects of healing and really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
Thanks. Yeah. And if you want, people can check out the website. It's The Optimum You with just the U.com.
Okay. And you're on Facebook and anything else? Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram. Same thing. The Optimum You.
Perfect.
I really appreciate you having me on. You're doing an awesome job. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Take it easy.
All right. Bye. Thank you everyone for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, subscribe, give us 5 stars, and leave a review. It really helps boost the podcast and spread the good word. My chiropractic practice is located in West Orange, New Jersey at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. You can also find us on Facebook at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. All of my information is on my website at drkevinpecca.com, drkevinpecca.com. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel at Dr. Kevin Pecca for podcast episodes, patient testimonials, and educational videos. I have daily affirmations and inspirational quotes on Instagram, at Easel Affirmations, EASEL Affirmations. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at drkevinpekka@gmail.com. drkevinpekka@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Cheers.